Welcome, everyone. I am Bob Wurzelbacher, the director of the Respect Life Office for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and this is our video podcast series that we call Being Pro-Life. Each month, we'll discuss a different topic in the Respect Life arena. We'll hear a personal story from someone deeply affected by that issue, and finally, we'll share ways that you can get involved. So today's guest is no stranger to the people in the pro-life movement, Mark Houck. Mark, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, I'm probably going to be reminding most listeners a little bit about your story. You were arrested in September of 22 for an incident that occurred in 21, I think October of 2021. You were accused of supposedly violating the FACE Act that is supposed to protect people's access to clinics that provide what they call reproductive care. I know most people probably know this story, but at least tell us the story of the day you were arrested.
Sure. So the day I was arrested was October 13th, 2021. And that's the day the sun danced, the last miracle of Fatima,
Right.
1917. So it was a beautiful day, and it was a typical Wednesday, like I have experienced for the last 20 years, where I would go into the city of Philadelphia for a 4-hour prayer vigil. So I would drive in, leave around 8 o'clock, get in by 10, stand vigil till 2, and then leave and get 2 hours home. So it'll be a full day. And when my son turned 12, I decided that I would intentionally bring him down with me every Wednesday. One, because he was being ushered into manhood. I wanted to initiate him into manhood by being with his father, but also showing him what a man should do, which is protect women and children and the common good, and teach him how to engage the cultural war. So this is something he'd been doing for a long time with me all year. So come October of 2021, Mark had been at least 30 or 40 prayer vigils with me. He knows the routine. He knows what to do. And he also knows the violence that's down there verbally, and the assaults that are there, that you experience tremendous hemorrhaging of people and violence emotionally, right? When I say violence, it's emotional violence. People are lashing out, because they're angry and they're hurting. And he's been a recipient of that. He's experienced that. There's no physical violence, but sometimes people, they'll spit on you, they'll do awful things to you. And you just take that and you receive that, but you take it as a gift too at the same time. So on this day, Mark and I got there. We always begin with our rosary. We took out our rosary and I said, Mark, let's pray. And he says, Dad, let's pray it in Latin. Right. So because the devil hates Latin, and he's a homeschool boy, so he knows Latin. So we're praying our rosary in Latin. And we're going for about 45 minutes, got through maybe our first full mystery, maybe starting our second mystery. And then a couple girls come out of the facility. So we minister to them, Mark and I. We hand them literature. We walk with them to a pregnancy resource center, which is another 50 feet away. And we try to help them make a better decision, or at least inform them of their potential to make better decisions. Well, at this point, I was intercepted by an escort when I was ministering to these girls. And he kind of barricaded me and blocked me. And he basically forced me to disengage with the girls. Not the first time he's done that, but it's the first time he's ran like 100 feet to stop me, which is unusual for him. I've known this guy for 20 years, very vulgar, very angry, very aggressive. My son has interacted with him as well. On this day, though, he comes back after that first encounter, and he goes back into the facility, Planned Parenthood. He comes back out about 20 minutes later and makes a beeline for my son. And he just goes right up and stands next to my son when we're 50 feet from the building. Now, he's allowed to do that. It's kind of awkward. I don't know why you would do that. He's never done that before. He stands at the entrance to the building. He doesn't normally stand that far away. In fact, never stands that far away. So I said, okay, well, he's allowed to do that. I can't stop him. But he's talking to me initially, and he's saying the usual stuff that he says to me, which is fine. But now he starts talking to my son. He's talked to my son before, but very short and not really directly trying to engage him. Well, he tries to engage my son. He tries to engage him by talking to him about how evil his father is and how his dad hates women. His dad is hurting women, and letting him know that what his father is doing is not good. So I said, look, you got to stop. Just stop engaging him. Just talk to me. That's fine. And he wouldn't stop. He just continued. I said, look, man, just go back to where you normally stand. Leave us alone. We're just praying down here peacefully. Just leave us alone. And he wouldn't do that. I said, look, you got to go back. Okay, leave us alone. Leave him alone. You're harassing my boy. You got to stop. And I walked him back. And actually, he walked back with me. Turned around to go back to be with my son. Well, he turns around. I don't know he's turning around. And he goes right after my son verbally again. So I turned around and I pushed him in. And not because I'm a pro-lifer that this is what we encourage people to do, because I was a dad. I'm just trying to protect my boy, right? Like I forget the pro-life movement. I'm just being dad on the sidewalk right now. Leave him alone. So he fell down, unfortunately. Nothing need to happen after that. Mark and I left the scene because we wanted things to stay calm, and we went right down to St. John the Evangelist, a block down the road, and we prayed a holy hour for Bruce. We were told that the police were on site, got a text message, came back, saw Bruce. He was fine, said a statement, said that, look, sir, there's probably no evidence here against you. He said, we weren't even here, but we're probably not going to do anything. But he may press charges against you. I said, that's fine. He can do that. And that's exactly what he did. He put me in a private criminal complaint. We had like 5 court proceedings. He didn't show up for most of them. He ended up not showing up at the last one. And everything got dismissed on April 22nd, 2022. So about 5 months after this incident, or 6 months, everything is dismissed. 5 days later, April 27th, I'm on the same street corner, and I'm served a target letter saying I was a target of a federal grand jury investigation. Have your attorney contact us right away. So I'm already being represented by the Thomas More Society at this point. My attorney is a former federal prosecutor, contacts the assistant U.S. attorney in Philadelphia and says, you have no case. My client is innocent. However, should you want to indict him, no need to bring an agent out to his house. He's a peaceful man. We'll bring him into you. Just give us a call. Oh, by the way, you can also pick him up. He's in the city of Philadelphia every Wednesday, where you had served him your target letter. And you have no case, by the way, because there's case law in your own district against a similar incident. So you really have no case anyway. Now, you have to know the progression of what happened. When I was served a target letter, that was pre-Dobbs leak. The Dobbs case leaks early May. Dobbs is overturned June 24th. Then Joe Biden comes to Philadelphia in July, says he's going to codify Roe. He's going to fight for abortion rights. Then all these pro-lifers start getting arrested in July and August. Joan Andrews Bell being one of them, Mar-a-Lagos. I get a call from my attorney in August of 2022 and says, have you heard from the assistant U.S. attorney? I said, well, no. Why would I have heard from her? He said, well, she won't return my phone calls. I said, oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll just let sleeping dogs lie. He said, yeah, that's a good idea. So then fast forward to September 23rd, Feast of St. Padre Pio. I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning because we have co-op for our homeschool. And that's a fun day for us. We get to leave the home and go be with other families. And that's an exciting day. So I'm up early, and I'm going too because I teach a class at co-op. And I got a quiche in the oven. I'm preparing my home. My kids are all asleep. It's about 6:30, 6:45, and I'm downstairs. My wife is barely stirring. And all of a sudden, there's a heavy bang at the door. I'm like, geez, it's dark o'clock outside. Like, who's doing it? And then the doorbell rings like over and over again, lights up the whole house. And then someone outside yells, open up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is someone hit a car? Someone hit a deer? Is there a telephone pole down outside? I don't know. So I go to the door and I say, who is it? I'm not just going to open up the door. Everybody in Bucks County where I live owns a gun except me. But I went to the door and I said, well, who is it? And they said, it's the FBI. Open up. And then they banged again and rang the doorbell again. They're like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I'm like, stay calm, please stay calm. I have 7 babies in here. I'm talking through the door. I can't see them. I don't know what's going on outside. I'm going to come out, slowly open up the door, show them my hands. I had 5 agents on my porch, right? M16 long guns pointed at me, heavily armored vest, ballistic helmets, ballistic shields, 2 battering rams, at least 10 marked and unmarked units on my property, surrounding my house. I got at least another 10 to 12 state troopers on the property with pistols drawn behind their guns. My daughter takes note of 2 SWAT guys at the back. So there's at least 20 federal agents and PA law enforcement state troopers on my property. And I think anyone would say, like, what are you doing here? And they said, well, you know why we're here. No, you're here because I rescue babies. And they didn't say anything to that. Well, they patted me down initially, but they didn't really say anything. They didn't arrest me. They didn't say, we have a warrant for your arrest. You're coming down to the federal building with us. They didn't show me a warrant. They didn't say anything. They just kind of were silent. I think fear banged on my door. Faith answered, and they really didn't know what to do. My wife comes down at this point. She's awake, and she's got her leopard bathrobe on, and she's tightening the belt. And she comes down. She says, who are you here for? She says first. She takes complete authority over the situation. We're here for him. What's his name? Maybe they're arresting the wrong person. Right. My wife wants to know. Like, maybe you're at the wrong house. Mark Houck. She says, do you have a warrant for his arrest? And they said, we're taking him with or without a warrant. And she said, well, you can't do that. That's kidnapping at gunpoint. So I'm like, yeah, like this is true. However, the guns aren't going. Guns are on her. The children are all screaming. The guns are in the doorway, and they're all downrange of the guns. So I'm in protector mode. My wife's in like you can't take my husband mode, and I'm thinking, well, I just want to protect my wife and children. I said, what do you want me to do? Can I get some clothes on? Obviously, I'm going with you. No. Can I put some pants on? No, because I was wearing shorts. No. Can I put some socks on? No. Can I put a sweatshirt on? No. Can I brush my teeth? No. Can I put some deodorant on? No. Can I take my rosary? Yes. They let me take my rosary. So,
That considered like against the law to do anything against your religion or something? Is that what that's?
I guess they just felt like, yeah, give this guy something. So my wife goes and gets me a sweatshirt. She's not letting them take me. So as she leaves, they direct her away. They arrest me and put me in the car. They don't give me a chance to say goodbye to the children. One of my youngest says, please don't take him. He's my best friend. He yells that to the state troopers and the FBI agents. When we get to the car, I'm put in the back of the SUV. My wife comes down and she's like, where is he? We're taking him to the federal building. And when I got to the federal building, they printed me and took my mugshot. The driver, who was from St. Louis on the drive down, the FBI agent from St. Louis, says it was a real pleasure meeting you, he says to me. But I think he had courage, and I think he realized that, I was an innocent man and this was wrong. I'm in the federal building, which is 100 yards from Independence Hall, where our rights were all established. They belly shackle me and ankle shackle me. Then they take me to a white room and chain me to a table for 6 hours, my wrists. I don't know why they did that. Further humiliation, perhaps, but I had perfect peace. I was at the foot of the cross. I was never closer to God in my life. Prayed without ceasing, prayed all the mysteries of the rosary, prayed with the communion of the saints. My will and God's will were perfectly united. They're completely one. And I knew I was in the unitive way. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and my wife was where she was supposed to be. And I had perfect peace. And I said, I don't know when I'm going back to myself. January 6th people are still in prisons to this day, some of them. And I just said, you know what? You're just going to have to take care of them. I just was calm. I had charity in my heart. I had forgiveness in my heart. No bitterness, no resentment. They told me after 6 hours that I was going to go home to be with my family, that I was being released on my own recognizance. So what that tells you is that I'm not a flight risk. I'm not a threat to the community,
Right.
nor am I a violent offender. They would never release somebody if you're one of those three things.
Sure.
So they're releasing me. And they said, well, okay, we're going down to U.S. Marshals. Okay. The belly shackles don't come off. The ankle shackles, and I'm shimmying myself down 6 flights of stairs with these shackles on. I said, is this really necessary? And they don't answer. I said, do you have a heavy cross for me to carry? They said, I don't have a heavy cross for you to carry. I said, well, it's coming. So I got the U.S. Marshals, and they treated me like an animal, dehumanized me in every way that a man could be dehumanized. Nonetheless, we are released 10 hours later. We returned to our family, and 5 days later, where we begin the journey towards the trial.
But I invited you on the show because as a Catholic, you really identified your ordeal with the stations of the cross that Jesus went through on the road to Calvary. So I wanted this audience to hear your telling of the story through that light. I found that really moving for myself when I heard you speak earlier in Cincinnati this year. So probably different from most of my interviews on this podcast. I suspect I won't have a lot of questions, right? So Mark, I just want you to just go in and share your story.
Sure. So after the arrest at my home on September 23rd, I was given 2 visions by the Lord, and the Lord gave me a vision that I would be at the State of the Union. I did not know which State of the Union I would be at, but it ended up being this past February. And the Lord told me that I would walk the way of the cross with him, that I would have my own personal Via Dolorosa as we traveled to our date of trial. And so that began for me 5 days after my arrest, which was my arraignment. And that's where I went before my judge, Pilate, if you will, and declared my innocence. Whereas Christ did not say anything, I just declared that we were innocent. But my crucifixion date was set as January 24th. So we began walking that journey that day, my wife, my 7 children, but very much myself personally with that journey needed to understand all that would happen through the lens of the life of Christ, and in particular his passion. And so once we were arraigned, and scheduled for our hearing January 24th, we embrace that cross, which is the second station. And that's truly embracing all that God wants for you. You know, there's a degree of excitement that our Lord had as he says, I've longed for this day. He wants to go to Calvary. He wants to suffer and die for his people. And this is his great mission, and he longs for it. So in a certain sense, there's an embracing of the cross that we did as well. Like, this is something that the Lord has granted us, that God has said, I want this for you. So we embraced that cross. Again, there was joy in it, but it was not the joy that I guess people would understand. Joy is as a peace beyond understanding. Joy is a fruit of the Holy Spirit. It's there's no happiness necessarily in joy, but acceptance and peace in the knowledge that you're in the will of God. So we embraced that and we carried that cross. So we took it up, and very quickly I found myself at station 3, which is Jesus falls the first time. Now, you wonder, why does Jesus fall the first time after, he so quickly taking up his cross? Well, for us, that's a question we pondered. That's something we thought about. And for us, it was the weight of the expectations of the world. The whole world came out and poured out love upon us, really blessed us with amazing gifts, and not only spiritual bouquets, but just their encouragement. We had people all over the world. Mother Teresa's nuns in Calcutta were praying for us. They had our family picture over her sarcophagus in Calcutta, and we're praying every day for our family over that. We had a whole village in Uganda that was praying for us and said so. The country of Australia, many messages coming in from that country. Europe, I joke, was starting to pray again, which was amazing. Canada was starting to pray. And then just these messages from all around the world. And in the United States in particular, we had a man in middle America, heartland of America, say, I'm a lousy Catholic, but seeing what's happening to you is bringing me back to church. And so these are things that were coming in. And then people were contacting us directly, like literally coming out to our home locally. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, the former prefect for the doctrine of the faith under Pope Benedict XVI, and I think the early part of Pope Francis's pontificate, he literally came to our doorstep, said, I want to pray with the Houck family. And then Bishop Joseph Strickland reached out the day of the arrest and said, I'm praying for you. I'm saying my daily mass for you. Anyhow, but back to Cardinal Mueller. He came to the home. He said, amazingly, tyranny and dictatorships are coming when they wake sleeping children in the middle of the night and arrest their father at gunpoint. And this is what he said to me and my children. And he announced it via a video. He condemned it. He helped us reclaim our home for Christ. And it was just a beautiful encounter. While he was at my lunch table eating with us, he said that I was like Martin Luther King. Now, I'm getting back to station 3. This is why station 3 was a fall. It wasn't a fall to any sin in particular. It was a fall to the expectations and overwhelming generosity of the world. And these labels that I was being given. I was given a label of a hero, pro-life hero. I was being told that I was like Joan of Arc, being told that I was a living saint by one of my pastors, and I was being told that even in one instance that I was like Jesus Christ. And so why was that a weight? That's just beyond anyone's understanding and comprehension to be compared to such people. So it became a heavy burden. We couldn't pray enough. We couldn't thank God enough. It was just overwhelming. And it wasn't a fall to sin. It was just a crushing weight that was just too much to deal with, right? It was beyond our understanding. And I even said to those people, you're embarrassing me, or devaluing the currency if you apply before my name. But nonetheless, we moved forward. But that was hard. That was a difficult time, and people might find that hard to believe. But it just was what it was, and it was just an expectation that really you just wanted to run from. But nonetheless, we pressed on, and we gave thanks to God for it. Station 4, 5, and 6 are all stations of refreshment and consolation. And this is Mary, this is Simon, and this is Veronica. And so on the journey of Christ's way to Golgotha, he has these encounters with people who love him, who wanted to encourage him and help him. And so, of course, Our Lady was present to us like never before. She watched her son all the way to Calvary. She knows what it's like to witness her children being mistreated, abused, and tortured. She knows that journey very well. And so Our Lady was extremely close to us. We were praying our rosary diligently, and we do that as a family, but we were even more diligent with Our Lady, but she was even more present. The consolations of her maternal heart were very evident to us, and we felt that tremendously, so much so that we thank God for the gift of it. Simon was men in my life that had long walked away from me, but were coming back to be in my life again and say, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Can I take you out to breakfast? What can I do for you? How can I be a Simon for you? In so many ways, they would say that. And of course, Veronica, women would come and say, can I bring your family a meal? What can we do for you and your family? And just all this sort of encouragement coming from women I didn't even know, women that my family and I didn't even know, people that would step up to us. Are you the guy? Because it was international news. Everyone knew about it. And if you
Right.
didn't know about it, you weren't paying attention. So it was definitely surreal, but it was beautiful. It was a good month of consolation. So I would say from like October to November, most of November was stations 4, 5, and 6, which was really beautiful. Station 7, Jesus falls a second time. This was the darkest point in the journey. Outside of the trial, this was extremely dark. In fact, it got so dark that I wanted to just give up. Like,
Right.
I can't do this. Basically, the devil came back as the father of lies, the great accuser. He started accusing me in the way that he used to do. But he built off the hero. He built off like the labels that I was appreciating, afraid of, expectations too much. He said, you're no hero. And I know you. I know who you truly are. And he would go back to those places and remind me and taunt me and really tempt me in so many ways to embrace the old man. It's like Ephesians 6, the full armor of God is
Right.
on. You get the breastplate of righteousness. You got the helmet of salvation. You got your gospel shoes on. You're girding your loins with the belt of truth. You got the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And you have all of that. However, my shield was down a little bit. And as he fired those arrows at me, he would hit me. And of course, like any person, that I was vulnerable. So for about, I would say 2.5 weeks, I really struggled with sins of the flesh. And it's not something I struggled with. I had been a long time, maybe 12 years, that I didn't have those struggles. And I was living a pure life. But then he came back in a way, and I succumbed to that in so many ways. I was in confession like every other day. I felt like a terrible husband. It was just my internal demons, it was in my head. It was all these things. I wasn't doing things necessarily very scandalous. I wasn't going to like a strip club or something like that.
Right.
It was just the devil reminding me of the old man and my own sinfulness, my own struggles, my own fleshly desires. I was in confession every other day. And in fact, I went to my spiritual director and I said, I can't do this. And he said, let me tell you 2 stories. He told me 2 stories. I'll tell you about St. Catherine of Siena. So St. Catherine of Siena, at the end of her life, she was 35 when she died, was having visions of tremendous lust and awful visions and things that she just said to the Lord when the Lord would appear to her, how could you allow this to happen? And she said to the Lord, where were you? And the Lord said, Catherine, I was right there. And she said, how could you be there, Lord? Like, this is just unfathomable. Like the things were horrible. The thoughts and everything. And he said to Catherine, Catherine, did you take any pleasure in it? And she said, no, Lord, I took no pleasure in it. And he said, Catherine, that was because of me. And my spiritual director shared that with me. And he said, Mark, if you take no pleasure in these temptations, of course, temptation is not a sin. Of course, falling and submitting yourself and into whatever you're being tempted to do is the sin. But he
Right.
said, Mark, if you take no pleasure in it, there's no sin in it. I said, okay. So let me tell you one more story. He said, Teresa of Calcutta, of course, Mother Teresa. He said, I saw her when I was in college. She went to Catholic University when I was there. He said in 1994, Mother was in D.C. for the National Prayer Breakfast, Catholic Prayer Breakfast. And there were journalists surrounding her after she gave her witness. And they said, Mother, what's the hardest thing about being Mother Teresa? And she didn't answer. She actually put her head down. And they said, is it working with the lepers in Calcutta, Mother? And she said, no, it's easy to see Jesus in the lepers. And then she put her head down again. And then she looked up and she looked at all the journalists and she said, the hardest thing for me is chastity, chastity, chastity. And then so my spiritual director shared this with me, and I said, "Okay, Father, I got the homily. I can press on." So we did press on, and we vanquished the evil one, and we moved away from that darkness. Saint Augustine says sometimes you got to wake Jesus up in the boat. He's kind of asleep. You have to wake him up, and you say, "Wake up, Jesus! I need you." And I did that. I did that. I was so much in almost despair, and he just calmed the storm, lifted the fog, and peace was restored. And so that was station 7. That was hard. That was December. At this point, I got to tell your audience that I was looking at life in prison, because when the government comes after you, they have a 98% conviction rate.
Wow.
You have a 2% chance of winning. So I knew I was going to prison. I had to prepare myself for that. A jury of my peers in Philadelphia, forget about it. It's pro-abortion city. So I was looking up what life in prison would be like. I asked my chairman of my board for my ministry, the King's Men, who's a former federal prosecutor. I said, "Will the government give me some time with my children after found guilty?" And he said, "Well, they'll probably give you about 3 months." He says, "That's if they want to be nice to you, though. If they don't want to be nice to you, they're going to throw you right in prison right away." I'm like, "Well, they don't want to be nice to me." So that's exactly what they did to Joan Andrews Bell. They put her 74-year-old Joan Andrews Bell. They just put her right in prison. So they would have done the same to me. And I'm looking up, where maximum security facilities are, penitentiaries, because I got an assault charge because I pushed the man who was abusing my son. I'm going to a max security facility. No country club here. So I said to him, "Well, they'll probably send me to Allenwood, PA. That's like an hour from my house." He's like, "No, they'll probably send you to Denver or Leavenworth, Kansas." And so I'm preparing my heart for all this. This is like when I'm dealing with my own darkness. I'm dealing with this. I'm thinking about it, and I'm preparing myself. And I said, if God sends me to prison and allows this to happen, it would be for the best. So I'm preparing my heart. At the same time, knowing that my family would not have their father, not have a husband, we just had to move forward saying, you know what? God has a plan. And so we did. And in December, we were quickly approaching Station 8. Mother Jacinta, former prioress for this wonderful order who took care of Sister Faustina, her order did, St. Faustina, and her mother and Miriam, her sister, came to my home with this Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And they came to my home and they said, we're so sorry for you. And it had all these spiritual bouquets on it, novenas, holy hours, adoration, masses said for me, rosaries. And she said, "Here, take this. This is for you to encourage you." And it's 12 days of Christmas, right?
Right.
And I said, "Oh, well, thank you." They said, "We're so sorry for you and your children, and but you." And I said, "No, weep not for me, weep for my children. They're not going to have their father in a long time, in a short while, for a long time." And so I felt like I was at Station 8, and I didn't try to recreate that. I just found myself saying that because I had been looking up that I would not be able to be with my family locally, and they would be without their father's presence in their life. And at the same time in December, I asked my attorney, would the government come in with a plea? And actually probably about November when I asked that question. And they said, "Well, no, Mark, that has to come from you." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to ask for a plea." They said, "Well, you're not going to get one. Government doesn't have to offer pleas. They're not in the business of plea bargaining, especially when they come after somebody." So I said, "Well, I'm not asking for it." So fast forward towards the end of December, we're moving into Station 9. And I knew that the evil one, this Jesus Falls the second time, I knew he would come back in the same manner because that's what he does. His tricks and his tactics are the same. And so I said, well, let's go to confession in advance, and not to confess future sins, but to just confess venial sins and where we're at, just to build up those graces, to go to daily mass and get more graces so that I could fend off the evil one. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says those that receive Jesus in a worthy manner, communion, will be able to avoid future sins. And so this is what I was trying to do. At the same time, I was preparing my heart. And the devil did come back, and he pulled that arrow again. Same thing, old man. And for about a day or two, there was a deep struggle there, but we vanquished him very quickly. And I knew Station 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 would come at the trial. I knew that. God said, that's where you're going to experience the final 3 hours of my life, I should say. After the Station 9, I got a call from my attorney. This is January 6th of all days. And the attorney says, the government came in with a plea. Now, remember, governments don't come in with pleas.
Right.
So I said, oh, yeah, well, what's that? They said, no time, no fine, no probation, just plead guilty to the assault charge. And I thought, wow, that's a great offer, right? That's a sweetheart deal. That's like the emperor saying to the early Christians, just take a pinch of incense as worship to this false god, right? To our God, not your God. That's just all you have to do, and then you're clear. But
Right.
see, misleading. The government's only offering that because they have a plan for your life, which is to come after you again. Nonetheless, I said, I'm not taking that to my attorney. I said, I'm not taking that deal. I didn't come this far to take this deal, right? I'm an innocent man. I said, let me go home and talk to my wife. So I went home and I talked to my wife. And I said to Ryan Marie, I said, the government came in with a plea deal. She said, oh, yeah, what's that? I said, no time, no fine, no probation. She said, and? And I said, just plead guilty to the assault charge. And she said, well, you're not going to take that. I said, I'm not. She said, no, because you're not a coward. And I didn't marry a coward. You're an innocent man. And this is a deal not worth it for us as a family. And she said, but however, Mark, it's your decision to make this. And I can't make this decision for you. If you decide you want to take it, she says, don't bother coming home. And so this was something that was really emboldened me, but also I knew she needed to say for me to have the courage to move forward in the direction I wanted to move. But I needed her blessing. I knew she sincerely meant it. And then
Yeah.
she said something really powerful. She said, Mark, we need to do it for the good of the pro-life movement because you're a sidewalk counselor, you're on the streets every week. They came after you. If you take this deal, they're going to come after the next pro-lifer and they're going to use your case as precedent to apply the FACE Act. If we don't fight, if we don't stand up, they're coming after the next guy. We cannot do this to the pro-life movement. We cannot run and hide and save our own skin right now. This is not what this is about. God did not prepare us for 20 years to walk away now. When I say 20 years, I've been in ministry full time for 20 years. So the grace for martyrdom had been given to me through many small victories over 20 years.
I'm sorry, Mark. I just I just have to say, I mean, all the focus is on you and how you withstood this trial, but your wife sounds like an incredible bedrock right behind you. That's as much a part of the story as you are.
Yeah, she's a helpmate, and that's what a helpmate does, right? Princess warrior, probably better translated for the Greek. But look, she knew that she would be accountable, that we would all be accountable, that look, there's this particular judgment in our life, and when we die, right? And then, well, there's the final judgment, but at our particular judgment, our Lord reveals to us our life. And there's a great theologian who's once said that the delta between what you chose in your life and what God wanted for your life, that's your particular judgment. And I thought, geez, man, if the Lord is calling me to do this and to lay down my life in this way, and I rejected that, well, guess what? Who's going to be held accountable? Not you, not my wife, but me. And but my wife in her role in that would have some accountability to a degree, right? Not as much as me. And she knew that. And so we said yes to that. And I called the attorney and I said, we're not interested. No deal. And he said, are you sure? I said, no deal. And the government was flabbergasted. They could not believe it. Everybody takes that deal. We didn't take it. We marched forward to January 24th. Now, I'll take you deeply into that in the final part of this program because that was really intense. I mean, it was the defining moment in my life, this trial. So station 10 is Jesus is stripped of his garments. And this happened on day 1 and day 2, January 24th and 25th. Day 1 was the jury selection day. And you're watching all these people, just like the people that were watching Jesus at Calvary. They're just like kind of watching. They're distant, they're removed, but they're judging. They're judging in their heart. They're judging you based upon your dress, what you look like, your demeanor. And you feel all these eyes on you. And, like that's just like the village that's looking at Jesus, this spectacle of this man who claimed to be the Son of God. And then you just had all that like on you. And now you're being slowly stripped. Like they move you and they tell you to do certain things like you have no freedom. You're just an entity. And then that first day when the prosecution began their part of the evidence for the trial, man, they called you everything you don't want to be called, everything that you don't want to be labeled as, everything that you're striving not to be. You're being stripped of your dignity in every way. And then it's being done in front of all your peers, done in front of your wife, your friends, your children. My children were in tears that second day, all in tears. Couldn't handle it. We couldn't bring them back the next day. It was too much for them. We wanted the jury to see them, but frankly, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. The stripping of the garments, the nailing of the hands and the feet, it was too much. It was calumny beyond calumny. Calumny is when you disparage and ruin someone's reputation based on lies. And so that's what was happening. And calumny and disparagement and gossip, it's all rolled into one there. But with opening arguments and closing arguments, they can say whatever they want.
Wow.
Because their job is to manipulate and coerce the minds of the jury, right? Because that's their and so is my attorney's job, right? He's supposed to present who I truly am. And hopefully it's all based on truth. But that first 2 days, it was just stripping, nailing, and just Eche homo, right?
Right.
Completely naked without shame. And I had to be a lamb to the slaughter. I can't say anything. When you're a defendant and you're in that position, you got to really stay calm. You got to be like emotional. You can't show much emotion because the jury's looking at you the whole time. They're looking at you and they're judging. Now, the jury, almost all of them supported Planned Parenthood. Almost all of them used their services. Almost all of them had donated to that cause. So I knew I wasn't going to get a fair trial. So I didn't want to give them any other reason to not like me, right? So I just had to be steady, calm, keep my smiling to a minimum. But we had rosaries praying throughout the whole courtroom. We had 2 courtrooms because there was that many people there to see it. They had an overflow room and there was a big screen in that overflow room. So there was a lot of people there out in support. We had communion delivered to us while we were in court. We had hymns being prayed in the hallway. It was like a revival in some respects. But anyhow, on the 3rd day of trial, that was the final day of the prosecution's presentation of evidence. That was, all station 11 and 12, right? Just being put on the cross. And on the 4th day, that's the day I took the stand. Now, I was going to take the stand, but my son also, my 12-year-old boy, who was now 14 at the time of the trial, 12 at the time of the original incident, he was going to take the stand. Now, this young man, can you imagine the pressure being put on a 14-year-old boy who has to give witness to what happened to his father and what his father did, and the pressure that he has on him, the stress that might be on him, to say the right things, right? To not say something that would maybe hurt or jeopardize his father's case. If he says the wrong thing, his father goes to prison.
Right.
I've never seen any 14-year-old have that kind of duress. So I said to my attorneys, look, because defendants don't usually take the stand in federal cases. I said, you're putting me on the stand, right? Because that boy can't handle this by himself. Plus, if I get found guilty, he'll never forgive himself.
Right.
So they said, don't worry, Mark, we're putting you on the stand. I said, good. Well, he went up first and he acquitted himself great. He was amazing. He was a rock. He got up there and he's a handsome boy. And, he gets up there and, hi, Mark, how are you today? The attorney would say to him. And he said, fine. He says, he's nice to meet you, Mark. And Mark says, nice to meet you, Mr. Patel. And then he went through. He's like, now, Mark, it's fair to say that you love your dad, right? Of course. Yes, I love my dad. And it's fair to say that he's like a hero to you, right? Yes, he's like a hero to me. And you would do anything for your father, wouldn't you, Mark? Yes. And then they just dance to another question.
Right.
Just kind of bringing him to this, like, you're going to lie for your father, aren't you? Did the defense prepare your testimony today? Yes, they did. Just kind of leave it there. Okay. They told you what to say. They told me to tell the truth. And that's what Mark said, right? And then they went through the whole incident, and Mark was he would correct them and so forth. Well, he came off that stand, and he's the reason we won the case. But he came off that stand. I couldn't be prouder. When I came off the stand, I said, how did I do to my attorney? He said, you did great, but your son was better. But he was just amazing. He was just a rock and, confident. When Brian McMonnell got up to cross-examine him, he said, Mark, we did prepare your testimony. What did we tell you to say? You told me to tell the truth, Mr. McMonnell. And did you tell the truth today? Yes, I did. And that was it. Then I got on the stand. Now, you got to remember the witness stand is like elevated. And
Right.
so to me, it was like going up on wood. It was like going up on the cross. We were elevated above the jury and above everybody. So I was fully at station 12, and my son was just kind of looking over the people. And of course, they try to manipulate everything. You believe they're murderers, don't you, Mr. Houck? No, I don't. You believe they're baby killers, don't you, Mr. Houck? No, I don't. Well, what do you believe, Mr. Houck? Well, I believe they're collaborators in the evil of abortion. Oh, so they are baby killers. No, they're sinners just like me. They didn't really know what to do with that. And then they came back again and they said, Mr. Houck, you believe you're in a war, don't you? No. On your website, it says you believe this is a war, a spiritual war. So it is a war, a spiritual one. They just were trying to find stuff that didn't make any sense and make sense of nothing. Of course, they went through the video that we had and so forth. But we came off that stand and we prayed for confusion on the part of the prosecution. And I really felt like that was a prayer that was answered, because the prosecution was all over the place. It really didn't have a lot of continuity in their prosecuting arguments. But nonetheless, we came off that stand, and I was resting in the arms of Jesus and Mary. I mean, I was done. I ran the race. I had peace. We did the best we could. I looked over at my attorney, and he's shaking his head. And I said, "What's the matter with you?" And he said, "Mark, prepare yourself. You're going to be found guilty on count 2, the assault charge." And I said, "Okay, well, we did the best we could here, Brian. You have peace. We ran the race. We fought the good fight. And now we're just in the arms of Jesus and Mary." And literally, that's how I felt.
Wow.
So it's Friday of the trial. Now, this is January 27th. This is the same day that I met my wife 16 years prior, right? This was not lost on me. The day of my defining moment was the day that I met my bride at a prayer vigil in the city of Philadelphia at an abortion mill. That's where I met my wife. And here we are 16 years later on that day, and I'm getting my verdict. Now, they go to deliberate around 4 p.m. And around 5:30, they come back and they say, "Judge, we're at a standstill. We can't do any more." And the judge is like, "Can you deliberate any more?" And they said, "No, we won't be able to come up with a decision." "Okay, we're adjourned till Monday," Judge Pappert says, "till Monday." I'm in the tomb Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm in the tomb for 3 days to just ponder all this. It's crazy. Again, I was like, wow, amazing. Can't write this stuff.
Right.
So we show up on Monday morning, January 30th, and there's a problem in the jury. The jury's passing notes to the judge saying, "We got a problem here." The judge says, "I need to meet with every jury member." This never happens. Now, we're already down one alternate. He was kicked off the first day because he had an economic hardship. We had one alternate. He's dismissed on Friday because he's not going to be deliberating. He's just the alternate. So the judge ends up kicking a man off the jury. And we don't know why. We're not told why. We just know that a man's being told that he has to leave. So they have to call the alternate in. Well, they get him there, and they have a decision in less than an hour. We're like, "Oh no, that's not good." He already made up his mind prior to being here, right? So we come back to the courtroom. It's Monday, January 30th, and the hour is 3 p.m. It's the hour of divine mercy. And there I am, and I'm starting to sweat for the first time. My palms, my hands are very sweaty. I couldn't believe it because I had calmed throughout the whole trial. Every morning, my wife would go like this to me and say, "I love you," behind me. And she was there right behind me, and the jury could see her. I had peace in my heart. But I just started to get very nervous. And I turned around. I said to my sister, "Prepare yourself. I'm going to be found guilty on count 2." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Just prepare yourself. Okay. There's 2 counts I'm facing. First count against the FACE Act, basic conditions of the FACE Act, freedom of access to clinic entrances. And the second violation is based off the assault charge. First count gives me 1 year in prison. Second count gives me 10 years in prison. So I'm facing 11 years in prison, $350,000 in fines, and 3 years supervised probation. This is what I'm facing, knowing in my heart that, hey, it'll work out for the best. If we go to prison, it'll be for the best." So the first verdict comes in, the jury comes back, and they say not guilty on the first count, rather. Now, I knew that would happen because it just didn't apply. We weren't blocking the entrance. We weren't affecting anybody's access to abortion. We were just protecting our boy. So, but the second act, I pushed the guy. That's assault, right? City of Philadelphia, not that big a deal, but PD in Philadelphia didn't want to prosecute. DA, rabid pro-abortion, he didn't want to prosecute. But the FBI saw value in it. So anyhow, the judge asked them on count 2, how do they find? The jury says, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Mark Houck, not guilty on count 2. So I couldn't believe it. I pushed my attorney. I was so excited. That was the second assault in the whole trial. I pushed him. I was just, whoa. But we were so excited. And we embraced and so forth. And here we are at Resurrection Station, Station 15, being redeemed. I'm looking at the judge. And the judge is just kind of watching me, Judge Pappert. And I said, "Thank you, Judge." And he said, "No, thank you, Mr. Houck." And then he said the best words of the trial. He said, "Mr. Houck, you're free to go." And I tell you, that's where you lose it.
Oh,
That's where you lose everything in your heart, because you know you're already set free in Christ. They can't take your freedom away, but they can take your outward freedom away. And
Right.
being able to be back with my family and coach my kids in sports, which they took away from me. Yeah, they take everything away from you. You can't travel. You can't do anything. And you're innocent until proven guilty, but yet they take it all away from you because of the Patriot Act and all these things that they can use against you now. But when he said those words, "You are free to go," man, you are truly embracing all that our founding fathers gave us. And you realize the great country we live in, and that we have to fight for that. And that's something that most of us take for granted every day. So I was a truly blessed man. And we walked those stations of the cross, and that was it. That now we're just living in station 15. And now we're like the apostles coming out of the upper room, making a left-hand turn and going into Jerusalem and proclaiming Jesus. And that's what we've been doing. And this podcast is another example of that.
So, Mark, it probably goes without saying, you are an inspiration to so many of us who pray outside local abortion centers, giving us the courage to keep going, to keep trying, whether or not we feel on any given day that we're making a difference, no matter the challenges we face along the way, the seeming defeats that we always seem to have, how much it looks like the culture of death is won on any given day. We know that the truth is going to triumph in the end. Your own story gives us a glimpse of that resurrection, your own resurrection story of your acquittal and getting back with your family and being able to do the things you've been doing with them. That's a glimpse of this resurrection that we all know is going to come someday to this world when the respect for life conquers the hearts and minds of everyone.
Well, thanks, Bob, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share the story, and I hope it blesses your audience.
I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in on this episode of our Being Pro-Life series. Head to the website to view all the links we talked about in this episode at www.catholicauc.org/beingprolife. Thank you again for joining us today. I look forward to being with you next time.